Fascism was born in the early 20th century, and remnants of it still hold on today. The word fascist conjures up images of secret police and violent oppression, with many struggling to understand how it even gained traction. However, as the world swings toward more liberal ideals, there comes an inevitable right-wing backlash. Many feel that fascism is once again on the rise, albeit a rebranded and less authoritarian version. Keep watching as we explore the roots of fascism and its branches in the modern world. Although the term fascist wasn't coined until 1915, the idea of an authoritarian leader was not new to the world. What set fascism apart was the idea of total military control over people's behaviors, actions, and beliefs. The seeds of fascism were sown in Europe after a series of progressive revolutions. During the late 1800s, many conservative thinkers began postulating about the benefits of a more authoritarian regime, including political theorists like Joseph de Maistre, Charles Moore, scientists and philosophers such as Friedrich Nietzsche and Giovanni Gentile, as well as various historians, writers, and artists. There was a feeling amongst the conservative right that the Enlightenment had subverted traditional social ideals and hierarchy, and that allowing the masses to control power would be devastating for society. German populist writers and politicians even promoted the idea that racially pure commoners would one day follow a leader so charismatic that it would make elections redundant. These theories about Aryan supremacy and anti-Semitism paved the way for Hitler's rise to power. On July 28, 1914, the First World War broke out. Although we like to see history as clear-cut, this war was highly nuanced, with many contributing factors and unexpected consequences. One of these consequences was the rise of fascism. After the war, Germany and Italy felt they had been mistreated by the Big Three: Britain, France, and the United States. War reparation payments devastated the German economy, and German propaganda supported the idea that the Allies had steamrolled the country into an unfair treaty deal. The German people also felt betrayed by their government, which had surrendered to the Allied forces. Although Italy had fought on the side of the Allied powers, its people believed they had not received everything that was promised to them by the Big Three in exchange for entering the war. Benito Mussolini was the editor of a popular socialist magazine, but his ideals swung drastically to the right during World War I. He left behind the socialist teachings of his parents and embraced nationalism and militarism, believing them to be the key to revolutionary success. In Italy, many were turning to socialism, inspired by the Bolshevik uprising of 1917, and the socialists began to win elections, gaining control over local governments. After World War I ended, Mussolini decided to tackle this socialist movement head-on, creating his Italian combat squads, or Fasci Italiani di Combattimento, a forerunner of the Fascist Party. The name came from the ancient Roman symbol for strength through unity, which was a bundle, or fascia, of rods. The squads violently opposed the socialists, whom they saw as cowardly traitors for not supporting Italy during the war. The socialists opposed the war, as they saw it as workers killing workers for the benefit of the elite. Mussolini's fascists felt that the socialists were internal enemies of Italy, and that their movement, along with communism, needed to be eradicated. Mussolini's violent fascist gangs, known as the Blackshirts, were funded by wealthy landowners and burned down socialist and communist offices, leading campaigns of intimidation and terror against any leftist institution. The violence clearly worked. In 1921, Mussolini was elected into the Parliamentary Chamber of Deputies. The following year, thousands of his armed supporters marched on Rome and demanded that Mussolini be made prime minister. The Italian king, Victor Emmanuel, was a weak and ineffective ruler. While the Italian government was preparing itself for a fascist coup, the king was vacationing at his home in Tuscany. Only after a plea for the king's return was sent via telegram did Victor Emmanuel return to Rome. He didn't exactly hurry, waiting 8 hours after the telegram arrived to leave his holiday home, justifying his late arrival in Rome by saying no one had explained the urgency of the situation. While the government hoped that Victor Emmanuel would declare an emergency and enact martial law, the king, who had met Mussolini during World War I and saw him as a strong and respectful figure, overruled the cabinet, who all resigned as a display of disapproval for the king's decision. In response, the king asked Mussolini to form a new government. But Mussolini didn't just become the new prime minister. He also became the interior minister, giving him control of the police and putting him in an unstoppable position. Now, Mussolini's fascist squads had the support and backing of the police. While the squads continued to silence critics, the police found cause to harass and arrest Mussolini's political opponents. As Mussolini consolidated power, Victor Emmanuel did nothing to stop it. The only time he did step in was when Mussolini tried to add the fasces to the national flag, and the king only refused because he felt the addition was disrespectful to his family. Mussolini's actions grew increasingly brazen, and he began to build his so-called cult of personality. In 1925, he essentially admitted that he was behind the assassination of the socialist leader Giacomo Matteotto. In a speech to the parliament, which is often cited as the start of his fascist dictatorship, Mussolini said, "I declare before this chamber, before the world, and before God, that I personally assume the whole political, moral, and historical responsibility for what has occurred. I declare that if the fascists are an association of troublemakers, then I am the head of that association of troublemakers." Despite this shocking revelation, the passion and fervor with which he spoke caused the attendees to applaud and shout, "Viva Mussolini! Viva Fascismo!" as he was carried out of the chamber in triumph. From that moment on, Mussolini relied on his personality alone to rule, projecting the image of an indispensable and invincible leader. His oppression of all opposition to his rule was intensified, and he abolished local elections. The fascists leaned heavily into propaganda, requiring movie theaters to show government-approved newsreels and cracking down on free press. By 1932, Mussolini published The Doctrine of Fascism, which described his regime as all-embracing. Outside of it, no human or spiritual values can exist, much less have value. Meanwhile, in Germany, a similar doctrine was rising. Former German soldier Adolf Hitler had become so disillusioned with the current German government that he joined the right-wing German Workers' Party in 1919. He quickly climbed through the ranks to become the party's leading propagandist and public speaker in 1920. The same year, the party changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or Nazi Party for short. Mussolini's fascist movement inspired Hitler, although he called his movement Nazism rather than fascism. Where Mussolini had his black shirts, Hitler had the brown shirts, or the Sturmabteilung. The SA protected party meetings, marched at Nazi rallies, and used physical violence to oppress political opponents. They also intimidated voters at both local and national elections. Hitler exploited the unrest that had been started in the aftermath of World War I and exacerbated during the Great Depression of the 1930s. Mass unemployment caused the ranks of the SA to grow, along with support for the Nazis. By 1932, the Nazis had won 230 governmental seats. Ironically, it was the Nazis losing seats to the Communists that finally pushed Hitler into power. Ex-Chancellor Franz von Papen, who was backed by the conservatives and prominent landowners, convinced President Hindenburg that the Nazis were a useful movement when it came to stopping the rise of communism. Although Hindenburg distrusted Hitler, his advisors were confident they could come to terms. And on January 30, 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor on the condition that von Papen would act as Vice-Chancellor and other non-Nazis would take up key positions in government. Then, under a month later, on February 27th, the Parliament building burned down. The day after the Reichstag fire, Hitler enacted a decree that dispensed all constitutional political rights. Hitler asserted that this was done for the protection of the people and the state, but many believed the Nazis had been behind the arson attack and used it to solidify their power. On March 23, 1933, Hitler passed the Enabling Act that allowed his government to issue decrees independently of the president, cementing his dictatorial position. Although both Hitler and Mussolini were ultimately defeated, fascist ideals live on. In the late 20th century, a new wave of xenophobic, ultranationalist, and militaristic movements rose up, and neo-fascism was born. During the 1990s, several developments indicated that the spirit of fascism lingered on. The Serbian ethnic cleansing of the Bosnians, the rising of the neo-fascist Movimento Sociale Italiano, and violence against immigrants in Britain, Scandinavia, and Italy proved that the causes behind the rise of fascism remained, and that there were still those who would support the rise of a new fascist dictator. In 2002, the world was astonished at the success of Jean-Marie Le Pen. a French far-right politician, and that of Pim Fortuyn in the Netherlands, who ran on a platform of anti-immigration. Many politicians with inherently fascist ideals now use the term populist, including those who campaign for Britain to leave the EU. These new movements strove to be seen as democratic in order to distance themselves from the previous totalitarian regimes. However, they still ran on the platform of nationalism, placing importance on stemming immigration. Currently, there's a rise in far-right politics, and conservative principles seem to be purporting the rejection of liberal and democratic values. In Italy, Spain, France, Finland, and Switzerland, far-right parties that could easily be labeled as neo-fascists are on the rise and are steadily gaining traction. According to many in Britain, the Conservative Party is actively promoting fascist ideals, while other, more openly fascist parties are growing. In Russia, Putin displays many of the markers of a fascist dictator, and some cite it as mirroring fascism, while China is decidedly more fascist than communist. For good or bad, fascism appears to be an inevitable reaction to failing democracy. The idea that everyone can be forced to think the same way and that a charismatic leader will do away with the democratic back and forth of trying to appease everyone can be seen as enticing. Fascism appeals to emotion rather than intellect, playing on historical grievances and nationalistic pride. Often, immigrants are the ideal scapegoat, as they are obvious outsiders who can shoulder all the blame for a failing economy. It seems that today's fascists have done away with violent oppression and have adapted to democracy, realizing that people must be willing participants in the process. That being said, most far-right groups will tolerate and sometimes encourage violence from their supporters. Yet, most of the political entities listed here will vehemently deny any links to fascism. Perhaps as long as people steadfastly believe that fascism will never return to the world, there will always be the threat that history will repeat itself. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about fascism, check out our book, World War II, A Captivating Guide from Beginning to End. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.